The battle had been going on for 3 days now. Ships burned in the darkness of space. Metal twisted and broke apart. Bodies floated among the wreckage, frozen and still. The Vela system had become a graveyard, and both sides kept adding to it. The Korath Dominion had sent 40 warships. Their vessels were long and sharp, built like knives meant to cut through anything in their path. They moved with deadly purpose, firing bright blue beams that could melt through armor like sunlight through ice. The Korath themselves were tall beings with 4 eyes and hard shells covering their bodies. They had been conquering worlds for 1,000 years. War was their way of life. On the other side were the Sindari Collective. Their ships were rounder, heavier, built to take punishment and keep fighting. The Sindari looked like nothing humans had ever imagined. They had no solid form, their bodies shifting like living water contained in special suits. They were older than the Korath, and they were tired of running. This system was where they had chosen to make their stand. Neither side knew. They were being watched. The Wanderer's lament drifted among the broken ships and scattered debris. It was small, ugly, and completely dark. No light shone from its windows. No engines burned at its back. To anyone looking, it seemed like just another dead ship. One more victim of the battle that raged all around it. But inside, 47 people held their breath and watched. Captain Elena Vasquez sat in her command chair, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display that floated before her. She was 43 years old, with gray streaks in her black hair and lines on her face that spoke of hard decisions and harder years. She had been a soldier once, back on Earth, before she became an explorer. Some habits never died. The display showed everything. Every ship, every missile, every beam of killing light. Red markers for Korath, blue for Sindari, and there, in the middle of it all, a single green dot. That was them. That was home. Sindari flagship is taking heavy damage. Lieutenant Commander David Chen reported from his station. He was her second in command, a quiet man with steady hands and a mind like a computer. They're losing this fight, Captain. Elena nodded slowly. She had seen that for herself. The Sindari were brave, but they were outmatched. The Korath had more ships, more weapons, more everything. It was only a matter of time. Not our fight, she said, though the words tasted bitter in her mouth. We observe. We document. We do not engage. Those were the orders. Humanity had only left Earth 18 years ago. They had found the stars waiting for them, full of wonders and terrors beyond imagination. They had also found that they were very, very small. The galaxy was old, and it belonged to others. Humanity was just a newcomer, peeking through the door, trying not to be noticed. The Wanderer's Lament was an exploration vessel. It had been sent to map this region of space, to learn about the species that lived here, to gather information that might help humanity survive in this dangerous new universe. It was not a warship. It had 2 small guns meant for shooting asteroids, not fighting battles. Going against either fleet would be suicide. Elena knew all of this. She repeated it to herself like a prayer. Not our fight. Not our place. We are observers. Nothing more than the Sindari medical frigate took a direct hit. The ship was marked with symbols that meant the same thing in 100 languages. Healer, helper, non-combatant. It carried no weapons. It was filled with doctors and patients, with the wounded and the dying. It should have been safe. The Korath missile did not care. About symbols. The frigate broke apart in a flash of light and fire. Elena watched it happen on her display, watched the ship split open like an egg, watched hundreds of small objects spill out into the void. Escape pods, Chen said, his voice tight. I count 347 escape pods. Elena's hands gripped the arms of her chair. Elena's hands gripped the arms of her chair. The pods were small, barely big enough for 1 or 2 people each. They had no weapons, no engines worth mentioning, just enough power to keep their passengers alive for a few hours. They were helpless, and the Korath hunter packs were already turning toward them. Hunter packs were small, fast ships designed for one purpose: killing things that could not fight back. They worked in groups of 3, moving together like wolves chasing wounded prey. Elena counted 4 packs breaking away from the main battle. 12 ships heading straight for the escape pods. Captain. Chun's voice was barely a whisper now. They're going to kill them all. Elena said nothing. She watched the display. She watched the hunter packs getting closer. She watched the escape pods drifting helplessly, full of wounded Sindari who had survived the destruction of their ship only to face something worse. The Sindari fleet was too far away. Their remaining ships were locked in battle, fighting for their own survival. They could not help. They could only watch their people die. Not our fight, Elena told herself again. Not our place. But she kept seeing the escape pods. She kept thinking about the people inside them. They were not human. They were strange beings made of living liquid, creatures that looked nothing like her or her crew. But they were people. They were afraid. They were going to die, and they knew it. And there was nothing they could do. Engineering, Elena said suddenly. Her voice was calm, steady, the voice of a woman who had made her choice. How long to bring weapons online? The bridge went silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at their captain. Chief Engineer Maria Santos answered from her station, her voice confused. Captain, we have 2 point defense turrets. 2. Against that? She pointed at the display, at the dozens of warships still fighting. We'd last about 30 seconds. I'm not asking about that, Elena said. She leaned forward in her chair, her eyes fixed on the hunter packs. I'm asking about those. The ones heading for the pods. Understanding dawned on the faces around her. Understanding and fear and something else. Something that looked almost like hope. Captain, Chun said carefully, our orders are clear. We are not supposed to reveal ourselves. Humanity is not ready for first contact. If we do this, there's no going back. Elena looked at him. She looked at all of them, her crew, her family, for the past 3 years. They had followed her across the stars. They had trusted her with their lives. Now she was asking them to risk everything. I know, she said simply, but I'm not going to sit here and watch those people die. Not when we can do something about it. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. I won't order anyone to do this. If you want to object, now is the time. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, slowly, Maria Santos turned back to her console. Weapons online in 3 minutes, Captain. Around the bridge, others began to move as well. Hands flew across controls. Systems powered up. The Wanderer's lament, dead and dark for so long, began to wake. Elena allowed herself one small smile. Then she turned back to the display and watched the hunter packs closing in. Let's go introduce ourselves, she said. Fleet Commander Torvax stood at the center of his command ship, watching the battle through 3 of his 4 eyes. The 4th eye tracked data streams on his personal display, numbers and reports flowing past in a constant river of information. He was winning. He knew it. The Sindari knew it. Soon, everyone would know it. The Korath had been fighting wars since before most species learned to walk upright. They had conquered 100 worlds, crushed a dozen civilizations, built an empire that stretched across half the galaxy. Torvax himself had commanded fleets for 60 years. He had never lost a battle. He did not intend to start now. The Sindari flagship was burning. Its engines were damaged, its weapons failing one by one. A few more volleys, and it would be finished. After that, the remaining Sindari ships would scatter or surrender. The system would belong to the Dominion. Another victory. Another step toward total control. Torvax clicked his mandibles together in satisfaction. This was what he was born for. This was what the Korath were made for. War was not just their profession. It was their purpose, their religion, their reason for existing. The weak existed to be conquered. The strong existed to conquer. That was the natural order of things. His tactical officer reported the medical frigate's destruction. Torvax barely noticed. Medical ships were not important. They carried no weapons, posed no threat. Their destruction was merely a side effect of battle, like dust kicked up by marching soldiers. The escape pods were even less important. Survivors could be collected later for questioning, or they could be left to die. It made no difference either way. The battle was what mattered. Victory was what mattered. Everything else was noise. 12,000 kilometers away, aboard the damaged Sindari flagship, Admiral Intel was making very different calculations. Intel was old, even by Sindari standards. Her liquid body had grown thick and slow over the centuries, her thoughts coming a little more slowly than they once did. But her mind was still sharp, and her heart still burned with the same fire that had driven her people for millennia. She watched her fleet dying. She watched her people dying. And there was nothing she could do. The Sindari had once ruled this part of the galaxy. They had been explorers, scientists, builders of wonders that other species could barely imagine. But that was long ago, before the Korath rose, before the wars began, before everything changed. Now the Sindari were refugees, running from one system to the next, always one step ahead of destruction. Velith 4 was supposed to be different. This was supposed to be where they made their stand, where they finally stopped running and fought back. Instead, it was becoming another graveyard. Admiral. Her communications officer's voice was thick with grief. The medical frigate. It's gone. Intel had seen. She had watched the ship break apart, watched the escape pods tumble out into the void. 347 pods. 347 of her people, wounded and helpless, drifting towards certain death. Can we reach them? She asked, though she already knew the answer. No, Admiral. The Korath have us pinned. If we try to break through, we'll lose what's left of the fleet. So, there it was. The calculation. Save the fleet, abandon the pods. It was simple mathematics. 300 lives against 3,000. Logic demanded sacrifice. War demanded sacrifice. There was no other choice. Intel had made this calculation before. Too many times. She had left people behind on a dozen worlds, watched them die so that others might live. Each time, she told herself it was necessary. Each time, another piece of her soul turned to ice. Hunter packs moving toward the escape pods, her tactical officer reported. They'll reach them in 8 minutes. 8 minutes. That was how long her people had to live. 8 minutes of hope, followed by fire and darkness and death. Intel closed her eyes. She had no tears to shed. Her species did not cry. But if they could, she would have wept enough to fill oceans. Neither commander noticed what happened next. Among the wreckage floating between the two fleets, something moved. It was small, barely visible against the backdrop of broken ships and scattered debris. If anyone had been watching closely, they might have seen a chunk of metal that was not quite drifting the way it should. They might have noticed it changing direction slightly, moving with purpose instead of randomness. But no one was watching. The battle was too loud, too bright, too consuming. The little ship slipped between the killing fields like a mouse moving through a room full of fighting lions aboard the Wanderer's Lament. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped her command chair and tried to breathe normally. Approaching the hunter packs, Lieutenant Park reported from the pilot station. Jim Park was young, barely 30, with quick hands and quicker reflexes. Before joining the exploration program, he had been a racing pilot, flying small ships through impossible courses at impossible speeds. He was the best pilot Elena had ever seen. Today, she was counting on that being enough. "Stay dark as long as possible," Elena ordered. "I want to get as close as we can before they notice us." The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of instruments. Everyone was at their stations, everyone was ready, but no one spoke. They all understood what they were about to do. They all understood what it might cost. Elena looked at the main display. The hunter packs were clearly visible now. 12 sharp-nosed ships racing toward the escape pods. Behind them, the main battle continued. Korath and Sindari ships hammering each other with enough firepower to destroy planets. And somewhere in the middle, invisible and silent, the Wanderer's lament crept forward. "Range to hunter packs, 2,000 kilometers, Chun reported. "They still haven't detected us. Weapons status?" Maria Santos answered from engineering. "Both turrets online and ready. I've boosted power to the targeting systems. It's not much, but it's everything we've got. Everything they had. 2 small guns. 47 people. 1 ship that was never meant for battle. Against 12 warships crewed by the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy." Dalalena almost laughed. Almost. "Captain." Chen's voice was careful, measured. "Once we reveal ourselves, there's no going back. The entire galaxy will know about humanity. We'll be changing everything. I know. Our orders. I know what our orders are." Elena's voice was sharp, then softer. "But I also know what I can live with. And I can't live with watching those people die while we sit here and do nothing." She turned to face her crew. These men and women who had followed her so far from home. "Humanity has been hiding since we reached the stars. We've been careful, cautious, afraid. Maybe that was smart. Maybe it was necessary. But right now, there are hundreds of people about to die, and we're the only ones who can help them." She paused, letting the words sink in. "I don't know what the galaxy will think of us after today. I don't know if this will make things better or worse for Earth. But I know this. When the moment came, we didn't hide. We didn't run. We did what was right." No one argued. No one looked away. Around the bridge, heads nodded slowly. Elena turned back to the display. The hunter packs were close now. So close she could see the details of their hulls. "Range, 1,000 kilometers, Chun reported. "We're in weapons range." Elena took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would change everything. "Drop the masking field," she ordered, "and open a channel to those ships." The Wanderer's lament lit up like a star. Systems that had been dark came to life. Engines glowed. Lights blazed from windows. And suddenly, in the middle of a battlefield that had seen only Korath and Sindari for 3 days, something new appeared. Something unknown. Something human. Commander Keth was having a good day. The battle was going well. His hunter pack had already destroyed 2 enemy ships. And now, easy prey waited ahead. 300 escape pods, drifting helplessly in the void. Full of wounded Sindari who could not fight back. Keth was young for a commander. Only 40 years old, with bright orange shells and eyes that gleamed with ambition. He had been waiting his whole life for a chance like this. The Dominion rewarded those who showed initiative, who proved their worth through victory. Today, he would prove himself. Today, he would show everyone what he could do. His sensor officer tracked the escape pods as they grew closer. 90 seconds to weapons range. 90 seconds, and then the killing would begin. "Commander." The sensor officer's voice suddenly changed, becoming confused and uncertain. "I'm detecting something strange. What is it?" Unknown vessel. Bearing 227. It just appeared out of nowhere. Keth turned two of his eyes toward the display while keeping the other two on the escape pods. The new contact was small, barely larger than a shuttle, and it was moving directly between his hunter pack and the targets. Classification? None, Commander. The hull configuration doesn't match anything in our databases. The energy signature is completely unknown. I've never seen anything like it. Keth's mandibles clicked together in irritation. This was not part of the plan. Unknown vessels were problems, complications, things that needed to be investigated and explained. He did not want complications. He wanted victories. Is it Sindari? No, Commander. It's not Sindari. It's not Karth. It's not any species I can identify. Behind Keth, the other two ships in his pack were reporting the same thing. An unknown vessel, unknown design, unknown origin. Just sitting there in space, blocking their path to the escape pods. Keth made a quick decision. He was not going to let some mystery ship ruin his moment of glory. Unknown vessel, he transmitted on all standard frequencies. You are interfering with Karth military operations. Identify yourself and withdraw immediately, or you will be destroyed. For several seconds, there was no response. Keth was about to order his weapons to fire when the reply came. The voice was strange. It was clearly being translated through primitive software. The words slightly wrong, the rhythm awkward and unnatural. But the meaning was clear enough. Negative. We will not withdraw. These escape pods contain non-combatants. They are under our protection. Keth stared at his communications display in disbelief. Protection? This tiny vessel, this insignificant speck, thought it could protect anything. Against 3 Korath hunter ships? Your protection? He let contempt drip from every word. You are 1 vessel. You face 3. What species is stupid enough to make such threats? The response came immediately, and this time the voice seemed stronger, more certain. We are human, from a world called Earth, and we do not abandon people to die. Human, Earth. Keth had never heard these words before. He quickly checked his database and found nothing. No records, no contact reports, no intelligence files. This species, whatever it was completely unknown to the Dominion. That made them unimportant. Unknown species were usually weak, primitive, barely worth noticing. The galaxy was full of such creatures, hiding in the shadows, hoping not to be seen. They were prey, nothing more. You have made a mistake, human, Keth said. Your 1 small ship cannot stop us. Move aside, or die with those you're trying to protect. We will not move. The words were simple, quiet, and absolutely certain. Keth felt something strange stir in his gut, something he did not recognize. It might have been doubt. It might have been the first hint of fear. He crushed it quickly. So be it, he said, and gave the order to fire. The 3 hunter ships launched their weapons at the same moment. 12 missiles streaked across the void, their warheads powerful enough to crack open battleships. Against a vessel this small, they would be overkill beyond measure. But the small vessel was not where the missiles expected it to be. The Wanderers. Lament moved like nothing Keth had ever seen. One moment it was directly ahead. The next moment it was somewhere else entirely, twisting and spinning through space with impossible speed and precision. The missiles, designed to track and destroy much larger targets, could not adjust fast enough. They flew past empty space and detonated uselessly in the distance. What? Keth's sensor officer sounded genuinely shocked. How did they do that? Before anyone could answer, the human ship attacked Dodd. It had only 2 weapons. Small turrets that were clearly not designed for serious combat. But they were aimed with terrible accuracy. The first burst of fire struck Keth's lead ship directly on its sensor array, blinding it completely. The ship spun wildly, its pilot suddenly flying without eyes. The second ship tried to maneuver, tried to bring its weapons to bear, but the human vessel was already moving again. It dove beneath the hunter ship's firing arc, so close that the two hulls nearly touched, and then something clamped onto the ship's hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the hunter ship's maneuvering fins tore free, ripped away by magnetic grapples that had never been meant as weapons. Two ships disabled in less than 20 seconds. Keth watched in stunned silence as the tiny human vessel came around for another pass. His weapons officer was shouting, trying to get a target lock, but the human ship would not stay still. It darted and weaved, jumped, and spun, moving in ways that should have been impossible for any pilot. Keth's targeting systems, designed to track Sindari warships, could not keep up. What are they? Someone on the bridge whispered. Keth did not answer. He did not know. Across the battlefield, everyone was watching now. The main battle had slowed as commanders on both sides turned their attention to the strange drama playing out near the escape pods. Fleet Commander Torvak stood frozen at his command station, all four eyes fixed on displays showing the impossible fight. Admiral Inthel watched from her damaged flagship, her liquid body rippling with emotions she could not name. The tiny unknown vessel had placed itself between death and her people. It was taking fire, risking destruction, fighting against impossible odds. And it was winning. Who are they? She breathed out. Her communications officer was monitoring all frequencies, listening to every transmission. They call themselves human, Admiral. From a world called Earth. That's all we know. Human. Intel had never heard the word before. She had met 1,000 species in her long life, seen every kind of creature the galaxy had to offer. But she had never seen anything like this. These humans were clearly primitive. Their ship was small, their weapons weak, their technology far behind both the Korath and the Sindari. By every logical measure, they should have hidden, should have stayed silent, should have let the strong fight while the weak watched from safety. Instead, they had revealed themselves. They had put themselves in danger. They had announced their existence to a galaxy that might destroy them, all to save people they had never met. People who were not even the same species thought made no sense. It was foolish, reckless, stupid beyond measure. And it was the most beautiful thing Inthel had ever seen. On the Wanderer's Lament, alarms were screaming. The ship had taken several hits despite Jin Park's incredible piloting. Hull breaches in 3 sections. Life support damaged. One of the 2 turrets was offline, but they were still flying, still fighting, still standing between the hunters and the helpless dock captain. Elena Vasquez gripped her chair as the ship shook from another near miss. Her arm throbbed where a piece of debris had struck her during the last impact. Blood ran down her sleeve, but she ignored it. Status of the escape pods? She demanded. Still secure, Chun reported. The hunter packs haven't been able to get past us. Elena nodded grimly. They were buying time. That was all they could do. Buy time and hope that someone noticed. Hope that someone cared. Then her communications officer straightened suddenly. Captain, I'm picking up transmissions from the Sindari fleet. They're breaking off from the main battle. They're sending rescue ships toward the escape pods. Elena felt something loosen in her chest. It had worked. Against all odds, against all logic, it had actually worked. And the Korath? She asked. The hunter packs are pulling back, Captain. The main fleet. The officer paused, checking her instruments twice to make sure. The main fleet has halted offensive operations. The bridge fell silent. For a long moment, no one spoke, no one moved. They had done it. They had actually done it, Elena allowed herself one long breath. Then she turned to her crew, these brave, foolish, wonderful people who had followed her into the impossible. "Good work," she said simply. "Now let's see about meeting our new friends." The battle had stopped, but the danger had not passed. Fleet Commander Torvax stood motionless on his command deck, processing what he had just witnessed. 3 of his hunter ships, crewed by trained Korath warriors, had been disabled by a vessel no larger than a transport shuttle. It should have been impossible. It was impossible. And yet, somehow, it had happened. "Analysis," he demanded. "Explain what we just saw." His tactical officers scrambled to obey, pulling data from sensors and recordings, trying to make sense of the impossible. Reports came in fragments, each one more confusing than the last. Their pilot, Commander, the way they moved. Our targeting systems couldn't track them. Their reflexes appear to be faster than ours, significantly faster. The vessel itself is primitive. Basic hull construction, minimal weapons, outdated engine design. There's nothing special about the ship. It's the crew. The crew is different. Torvax absorbed this information slowly. The Korath were the supreme warriors of the galaxy. They had conquered 100 worlds because they were stronger, faster, and more deadly than anyone else. The idea that some unknown species could outperform them, could move and react faster than Korath hunters, was deeply disturbing. What do we know about these humans? Almost nothing, Commander. They appear to come from an unexplored region of space. Their technology is primitive by our standards. This is the first confirmed contact. First contact. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire. First contact meant reports to the High Command. It meant investigations, assessments, decisions made by powers far above Torvax's rank. It meant complications that could affect his career. But more than that, it meant uncertainty. And Torvax had built his entire life on certainty. The certainty of Korath's superiority. The certainty of victory through strength. The certainty that the weak would always fall before the strong. This tiny human ship had shaken that certainty. And Torvax did not know how to feel about that dot across the void, aboard the Sindari flagship. Admiral Inthel was having very different thoughts. She watched the rescue ships approach the escape pods, watched her people being saved from certain death. 347 lives that should have been lost. 347 families that would not receive death notices. 347 miracles, all because of one small ship and its strange crew. "The human vessel is damaged," her sensor officer reported. "Multiple hull breaches. Their weapons are offline. They're barely holding together. But they're still there," Inthel said softly. "Still protecting the pods." "Yes, Admiral. They haven't moved." Inthel's liquid body rippled with emotion. In her long life, she had seen cruelty beyond measure. She had watched civilizations burn, seen children torn from parents, witnessed horrors that still haunted her darkest moments. The galaxy was a cruel place, full of beings who cared only for power and conquest. But she had also seen kindness. Rare, precious, beautiful kindness. Moments when someone chose to help instead of hurt, to protect instead of destroy, to stand up for strangers instead of walking away. This was one of those moments. And she would not forget it. "Open a channel to the human vessel," she ordered. "Admiral, we don't know if they're hostile. We don't know anything about them. They just risk their lives to save our people. I think we know enough." The channel opened with a crackle of static. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a voice came through, tired but steady, speaking in carefully translated Galactic Common. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the human vessel Wanderer's Lament. To whom am I speaking?" Inthel leaned forward. "I am Admiral Inthel of the Sindari Collective." Captain Vasquez, you have my gratitude. You saved my people. We did what anyone would do, Admiral. No. Inthel's voice was firm. You did what no one else would do. What no one else has done. In all my years, in all my travels, I have never seen a stranger risk everything for people they had never met. You are either the bravest beings I have ever encountered, or the most foolish. There was a pause. Then, the human captain laughed, a strange sound that the translator struggled to convey. Probably both, Admiral. My crew has been telling me I'm crazy for the past hour. Despite everything, Inthel found herself amused. There was something refreshing about these humans, something honest and direct that she rarely encountered. Your ship is damaged, she said. We have repair facilities. Please, allow us to help you as you helped us. That's very kind, Admiral. But I should warn you, we're not exactly sure what the Korath are going to do. They might not appreciate you helping us. Let me worry about the Korath, Captain. You have done enough. The channel closed and Inthel turned to her staff. I want our best repair crews ready. I want medical teams standing by. And I want every piece of information we can gather about these humans compiled into a report. Admiral, what do we tell the collective? How do we explain what happened here? Inthel considered the question carefully. The Sindari collective was led by a council of elders, cautious beings who feared change and dreaded the unknown. They would want to know everything about these humans. They would want to assess them, categorize them, decide if they were a threat or an opportunity. Tell them the truth, Inthel said finally. Tell them that today, in our darkest hour, when all hope seemed lost, help came from an unexpected source. Tell them that a species we had never heard of revealed itself to save our people. Tell them that these humans, whoever they are, chose compassion over safety, courage over fear. She paused, her liquid body settling into a more solid form. And tell them that I believe this is only the beginning. Back on the Wanderer's Lament, the crew was assessing the damage. It was bad. The ship had taken more hits than Elena had realized. 2 of the crew members were seriously injured, burned by plasma that had leaked through a damaged conduit. Another 3 had broken bones from impacts and collisions. The hull was holding, barely, but they were venting atmosphere from several sections. We're not going anywhere fast, Maria Santos reported grimly. The engines are damaged. Life support is running on backup power. We're going to need help. Elena nodded wearily. Her arm had been bandaged by the ship's medic, but it still throbbed with every heartbeat. She had been running on adrenaline for the past hour, and now that the immediate crisis was over, exhaustion was crashing over her like a wave. The Sindari have offered to help, she said. We'll accept, Captain. Chen approached, his face troubled. What do we tell Earth? They're going to want a report. They're going to want to know why we broke every rule in the book. Elena closed her eyes for a moment. Earth, home, the place they had left 3 years ago, the place they might never see again. The people there had no idea what had happened today. They had no idea that humanity was no longer a secret, that their children had stepped onto the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible. We tell them the truth, she said finally. We tell them what we saw and what we did. We tell them that when the moment came, we made a choice. And if they court-martial us? Elena opened her eyes and looked at her crew. They were battered, exhausted, afraid. But they were also proud. She could see it in their faces, in the way they held themselves. They had done something important today, something that mattered. Then we face it together, she said. But I don't think they will. I think when they see what happened here, when they understand why we did it, they'll understand. She stood up slowly, ignoring the pain in her arm and the ache in her bones. We're about to have visitors, she said. The Sindari are sending a shuttle. I don't know what they want, but I think we should meet them properly. Chun nodded, I'll have the crew cleaned up and ready." As the bridge staff moved to prepare, Elena walked to the main viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the debris fields and the damaged ships, was a galaxy full of beings who had never heard of humanity. A galaxy full of wonders and terrors, allies and enemies, possibilities beyond counting. Today, humanity had announced its presence. Not with words or diplomacy, but with action. They had shown the galaxy what kind of people they were, what they valued, what they were willing to fight for. Elena didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know if the Karath would seek revenge, if the Sindari would become allies, if Earth would praise them or punish them. The future was uncertain, full of questions she couldn't answer. But she knew one thing for certain. She knew that when the moment came, when the choice was between safety and conscience, her crew had chosen conscience, and she would not trade that for anything in the universe. The Sindari shuttle appeared on the edge of the viewport, a silver shape moving gracefully through the debris. Elena watched it approach, and for the first time since the battle began, she allowed herself to smile. "All right," she said softly to herself. "Let's see what happens next." The Sindari shuttle docked with the Wanderer's Lament 2 hours after the battle ended. Admiral Inthel stepped aboard personally, refusing to send a subordinate for something this important. She had seen images of the human ship, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. The vessel was small and cramped, built with a brutish efficiency that spoke of limited resources and practical minds. The walls were plain metal, undecorated, functional. The lights were harsh and bright. Everything smelled faintly of sweat and recycled air, and the humans themselves were stranger still. They were solid beings, made of meat and bone, with 2 eyes and 2 arms and 2 legs. They walked upright on those legs, balanced in a way that seemed precarious and unstable. Their faces were soft and expressive, showing emotions that Inthel could almost read despite their alien features. Captain Vasquez met her at the airlock. The human leader was shorter than Inthel expected, with dark hair streaked with gray and tired eyes that still held a spark of determination. Her left arm was wrapped in white bandages, and she moved stiffly, clearly in pain. "Admiral," Vasquez said, extending her uninjured hand in what appeared to be a greeting gesture. "Welcome aboard. I apologize for the mess. We weren't expecting visitors." Inthel studied the hand for a moment, then reached out with one of her own limbs, allowing it to flow around the human's fingers in a Sindari gesture of respect. "The mess is nothing," she said. "It is evidence of courage. I am honored to stand here." They walked through the ship together, Vasquez explaining things as they went. The Wanderer's Lament had been designed for exploration, not combat. Its mission was to map unknown regions of space, to study new planets, to gather knowledge. The crew were scientists and explorers, not soldiers. "Then why did you fight?" Inthel asked. Vasquez was quiet for a moment. They had reached the bridge where the rest of the senior crew waited. Through the main viewport, the escape pods were visible, now surrounded by Sindari rescue vessels. "Because we could not fight," Vasquez said finally. "I looked at those pods, at all those people about to die, and I thought about what it would mean to do nothing, to just watch, to save ourselves and let them burn." She shook her head. "I couldn't live with that. None of us could." "You risked everything," Intel said. "Your ship, your crew, your entire species. You revealed yourselves to the galaxy, made yourselves targets, all for people you had never met. Yes, that is not logical." Vasquez smiled, a strange expression that Intel was learning to recognize as humor. "No, probably not. But it was right." Right, such a simple word, such a powerful concept. Intel had met species who talked about logic, about strategy, about the cold mathematics of survival. She had met species who preached strength and power, who believed that might made right and weakness deserved destruction. But she had rarely met beings who simply believed in doing what was right, regardless of the cost. "Your people," she said slowly. "Are they all like you?" Vasquez considered the question. "Not all. We're not perfect. We've made mistakes, done terrible things, hurt each other in ways I'm ashamed to admit. But we try. We try to be better than our worst moments. We try to help when we can, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous." She paused. "We believe that life has value. All life, not just human life." Intel felt something shift inside her, something that might have been hope. The days that followed were busy. Sindari repair crews worked alongside human engineers, fixing the damage to the Wanderer's Lament. Medical teams treated the injured. Diplomats and officials arrived from the Sindari homeworld, eager to learn more about this strange new species. And word spread. It spread faster than any ship could travel, carried on the quantum networks that linked the stars. An unknown species had appeared in the middle of a battle. They had placed themselves between hunters and prey. They had fought against impossible odds to protect strangers. The Korath Dominion received the reports with a mixture of anger and unease. Fleet Commander Torvax was summoned to explain his failure, but even as he was reprimanded, the High Command was already analyzing the data. These humans were clearly inferior in technology and numbers. They should have been easy to dismiss, but they were not easy to dismiss. Something about them nagged at the Korath leadership, something that went beyond military calculations. A species that would risk everything for strangers, that would reveal itself to protect beings it had never met, was not a species that would be easy to conquer. Such beings did not surrender. Such beings did not break. The Sindari Collective welcomed humanity with open arms. Trade agreements were drafted. Cultural exchanges were proposed. For the first time in generations, the Sindari felt hope. They had found allies, real allies, beings who shared their belief that the galaxy did not have to be a place of endless war. And across the galaxy, other species watched and wondered. The Velith archives recorded the event in careful detail. Species designation: human. Origin: Sol system, Orion arm. First contact date: Galactic Standard 7792.156. Initial assessment: technologically primitive. Limited space presence. Small population. And then, in a note added by an anonymous archivist, do not underestimate. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at the viewport of the repaired Wanderer's Lament, watching the stars. 3 weeks had passed since the battle. Her arm had healed. Her ship was whole again. Her crew was ready for whatever came next. She had spoken with her several times now. The initial reaction had been shock, followed by fear, followed by 1,000 questions she couldn't answer. But as the full story emerged, as people understood what had happened and why, the fear gave way to something else. Pride, hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, humanity was ready for the stars after all. Captain Chun approached, a datapad in his hands. "We've received new orders from Earth Command." Elena turned. "Let me guess. We're being called home to face a disciplinary hearing." Chun smiled. "Actually, no. They're promoting you and extending our mission." He handed her the pad. "They want us to continue exploring. They want us to make contact with more species, to learn about the galaxy, to represent humanity." Elena read the orders twice, just to make sure. It was real. Earth wasn't punishing them for what they'd done. They were rewarding them. "There's a message from the Secretary General," Chun added. "He asked me to read it to you personally. Go ahead." Chun cleared his throat. "Captain Vasquez, what you and your crew did at Velith 4 was extraordinary. You reminded us of who we are at our best, who we want to be. You showed the galaxy that humanity stands for something beyond mere survival. We are proud of you. We are grateful to you. And we are counting on you to continue representing us among the stars. Godspeed, Captain. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Through the viewport, she could see Sindari ships moving in formation, escorting them toward the edge of the system. Beyond that, the unknown waited. New worlds, new species, new challenges. Well, she said finally, I guess we'd better not disappoint them. The Wanderer's lament turned toward the stars and began to move. Behind it, the Vela system fell away, becoming just another point of light in an infinite sea. But what had happened, there would not be forgotten. In the great archives of 100 worlds, a new entry had been made. Humanity, a small species from a small world in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. Primitive, limited, seemingly insignificant. But when the moment came, when the choice was between safety and conscience, they had chosen conscience. They had stood against the darkness. They had shown the galaxy what courage looked like, and the galaxy would never be quite the same again. Far away. On a world called Earth, children looked up at the night sky and dreamed of adventures among the stars. They did not know yet what their brothers and sisters had done, how they had changed everything, how they had announced humanity's presence to a universe full of wonders and dangers. But they would learn. And when they did, they would understand something important. They would understand that being human meant more than just surviving. It meant standing up for what was right. It meant helping those who needed help. It meant being brave when it would be easier to be afraid. It meant looking at a universe full of darkness and choosing to be a light. The stars waited. Humanity was coming, and nothing would ever be the same.